this video, we're giving you a sneak peek into the types of tutorials we have in our VIP membership. Our VIP membership is a monthly subscription that gives you access to a giant database of Bubble tutorials. We're at around 450 plus lessons or so to date, and we add a new lesson every single week. We typically cover more advanced logic. We walk through everything step by step. You also get access to a demo application so you can actually study everything yourself. So you can learn more about the VIP membership in the description below. For now, we're just going to jump into this particular lesson where we teach you how to build out a voting feature for ranked choice voting. Enjoy! In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to create a ranked choice voting feature in your app. This is more of an advanced lesson. We've got a lot of logic behind the scenes. We're going to do some looping logic. We'll work with multiple data types. We've got calculations, several conditions, because there can be different scenarios here in the results. But I'll walk you through it step by step so that you can implement it in your app. So I'll take you through the preview here first with a couple of examples, and then we'll jump into the editor. So with ranked choice voting, a voter is going to select their candidates by order of preference. So they're not just selecting, one person out of all the candidates. So here's an example of a completed vote with 10 votes here, with candidate A winning. So you can see across all 4 candidates in the first round, everybody's first choice was split up like this here. So candidate A received 4 votes, B received 3, C received 2, and D received 1. Even though candidate A received the most number of votes, it didn't actually get the majority. And so what we do here is we eliminate the candidate who received the least number of votes, in this case candidate D, and then we move on to the second round. The votes that went to candidate D are going to move to the next preference from those voters and be dispersed across the remaining candidates. Okay, so we can see that candidate A now gained a vote here in round 2. Still not the majority, so we're going to eliminate candidate C, and then in round 3, same thing. Both A and B gained 1 vote, but that sent candidate A into a clear majority here, and so they are declared the winner. All right, now I'm going to go over into this other ballot that we have here for club president, and I'm going to, in real time now, just create a few votes. I'm going to do 6 votes with a specific scenario so you can see, slightly different outcome here, and you can also see what we've designed for the actual ballot for the voter to interact with. So I've got 3 candidates in this case. Okay, so for my first vote, I'm going to say 1, 2, and 3, right? Candidate A is my first preference, candidate B is my second preference, C is my third. And I've designed this so that, you can deselect, reselect. If you change your mind and want to switch the preference numbers, it'll automatically clear the others so that you don't have any duplicates there, like this. Okay, so we've got a lot of smart logic happening there. All right, so I'm going to submit this first vote. Okay, I'm not doing any calculations quite yet. I'm going to do another vote. I'm going to do the exact same scenario, 1, 2, and 3. Submit that vote. Okay, going to create my third vote. We're going to do 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, and 2. And I am doing a very specific outcome here, so you can see slightly different result here. All right, so that's our third. We'll do 4. We're going to do 3, 1, 2, like this. Okay, submit. And our fifth vote is going to be 2, like that, 1, and 3. Okay, submit, and our final vote for this example is going to be 3, 2, 1, and submit. Okay, so I have 6 votes. I'm now going to calculate, which is going to trigger a looping workflow to kind of move through every candidate, every round, count everything up, and we end up with this tie situation here. So only 2 rounds were necessary for 3 candidates to have our outcome, and in this case we have a very even split, so we result in a tie. You're going to have a lot of data behind the scenes to take whatever next step you need from a tie situation. So in the first round, candidate A received the most number 1 votes, but still not the majority, so we eliminate C, and then that vote got sent to candidate B, which gives us an even 3 votes for each candidate, and so we end up with a tie there. Okay, and you can see that I also have some clear actions. You'll notice when I start a vote, I also have the ability to delete a vote for some resetting. So now we're going to walk through all of the structural components to this and the workflows that power these features in the editor. Let's start with the data structure. We're working with 5 different data types here to power all of these features. The ballot data type is kind of your most parent record. Everything gets tied back to the ballot. So for example, this is what I'm referencing here in this dropdown. Club president is 1 single ballot, and so all of the votes that are created are tied to that 1 ballot, all of the calculations, everything goes back to that one, so you can keep it all together and you don't get them confused with a completely different ballot. Okay, so that's 1 record here. We're going to have relationships to what I'm calling calculation rounds. That's a separate data type that we'll look at in just a second here. A relationship to all the candidates on the ballot. Okay, a list of candidates. This is a separate data type. Right now I just have the name of the candidate, but you can of course have other fields like a description, a picture, whatever you want to add there. And I also have a separate list of candidates field for anybody who's been eliminated as it goes through those calculation rounds. And this is going to help us with our looping logic to make sure that, we can ignore, we don't need to count up anything for anyone who's already been eliminated. I have a yes or no field to say that it was a tie. If it resulted in a tie, we'll say so here. We have the title, which is just a regular text for the ballot. What are we voting on? And then a single relationship field here for the one candidate who was a clear majority winner. Okay. Now we already looked at the candidate there. Again, you can build this out more if you want more details for the candidate. I'm going to jump over here to our vote data type. So this is what the voter is creating whenever they hit that submit button. And this is also kind of like a parent record for their one submission. A vote is going to also have a relationship to a list of rankings. So every individual ranking that they create here, let's say candidate A for position 1, candidate B for position 2, those are two separate, what I'm calling rankings. Okay, but overall, I'm only submitting one vote. Okay, I'm dropping my ballot in the box. If this was a physical ballot that I was filling out, it's one single vote for one person, but 4 individual rankings, one for each of the candidates on the ballot. Okay, so vote has a relationship to to a list of rankings. It's the same number of rankings as there are candidates. This is also tied back to the ballot that we're voting on, and then I also have a completion date field here so that once they've submitted all of their rankings, they've hit that submit button, we know when it was completed. Okay, then I have the ranking record. So this is sort of the child of the vote record. Okay, of course, we're going to tie it back to the ballot, but we need to know the candidate that the ranking is for and the actual rank that they're giving them. So candidate A for position 1, candidate B for position 2. So this is just a number here. And then again, the relationship back to that parent vote record for the user. Now, when it comes to calculating, we're going to create a record called calculation round, and we're going to create one for every round and every candidate. Okay, so there's going to be several of these records. So let me show you here in the visuals. In round 1, we're going to have 4 calculation round records created, right? One for candidate A, one for B, one for C, one for D, because what we're saving to that record are the individual, counts or sums of all of the votes that they received and the calculated percentage. So here is our calculation round structure, obviously tying it back to the ballot, and then we're going to have the candidate and round number relationship, right? So candidate A, for example, in round 1 received this number of votes, this is just a number, and we'll also calculate what that means in terms of percentage of the total number of votes. Okay, so every individual candidate for every round is going to have a calculation round created when it's time to add everything up. All right, and each of those is going to be added back to the ballot's list of rounds. This is just to help us, be more efficient with our logic, so we're not doing a lot of searching. These relationship fields are helpful as shortcuts so that we can get to the data we need more efficiently. We're not using as many workload units. Okay, and from all those calculations, we can see who's been eliminated, who the winner is, or if it ended up in a tie. All right, so we're going to go through the workflows here, and we'll go in the order that the users will experience everything. We'll start with the creation of the vote, and then we'll go into the calculations. Keep in mind also that there are parts of this design that I'm creating specifically for demonstrating everything. You certainly don't have to design all of these flows in the exact same way. I will point out a couple of important areas just to make sure that you implement, the same concept, so to speak. So for example, I have a drop down here to switch between my different ballots. You don't have to do it that way. Your page could be a dynamic page that references one ballot at a time. That's okay. I also have all of the calculation happening at the same on the same page as the voting. You don't have to do that either. You can have all of this on separate pages. So one page for the voting experience, one for the calculation experience. The important thing is that both of these experiences actually have a very clear reference to a single ballot. That's all that matters. Everything else will work just the same, okay? So let's start with the voting experience here. The Start New Vote kicks things off. So when the user clicks on that button, they're going to create a new vote record, and it's going to reference the ballot. That's all we know about the vote right now. And then we're also going to set up the data source of a group that's down below this button, so we have a very quick reference to the vote record. That way we're not searching for it. Okay, so I'm talking about this group down here. Okay, now I also have a delete button that will clear out the votes details. So if I click on this, I want to say start over or go back or something. We want to make sure that we don't leave any orphaned records in the system. So we're going to delete all of the rankings for the vote and then all of the the single vote record itself. Remember, the rankings are the individual preference selections per candidate within the vote. All right, and then we have a submit button, and this is going to update the vote's completion date. We'll actually generate the rankings in a separate workflow. And this is all we need here, at least for the data structure that we have in place now. You may have other details you want to collect. That's perfectly fine. This is likely where you'll want to save those details upon submission. Then we're going to reset the group because now the user is done with their vote. Okay. Now, as far as the design goes here, I actually have an intersection of a table and a repeating group. We're also going to be using the help of a plugin here to generate a list of numbers for us. So the plugin for this one here is the Toolbox plugin. And the element that we're using within this toolbox is called List of Numbers. This is a free plugin, really helpful one, kind of a Swiss Army knife of tools. And I've added an instance of that List of Numbers element to the page. All this does is it generates literally a list of numbers. So if I say I want a list of numbers from 1 to 4, because there are 4 candidates here, you see that we're counting the candidates. I don't want to skip any numbers, just increment by 1. Then we're going to get a dynamic list of 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I come in here into the inspector, I'm going to show you, we'll find that list of numbers element. There's 2 of them because we have one for each of our tables there. So list of numbers A, you can see this is what it produces. Literally a list 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that list is the data source for a repeating group to help us generate a dynamic number of columns within our table. So here we have 4 columns, whereas for this ballot we have 3 columns because there's 3 candidates. All right, so I'll take you into the structure here a little bit more. So this table is initially a list of candidates. Okay, it's a vertical table. However many candidates there are, that's how many rows will be created. So for club president, we have 3 rows for 3 candidates. Okay, and then in column B here, I'm going to open this up. So let's say cell 1B, that's down below within the dynamic row. You can see I have a repeating group. It's 1 row for the repeating group, but a dynamic number of columns. And the number of columns is going to be generated by that list of number source, okay, from our plugin element. So this type of content is just number. List of numbers list is the built-in state from the plugin that will output that list, and that will generate our dynamic number of columns. You'll also want to have that in the header if you're going to design a table similar to this. So I have another repeating group. It's also referencing the exact same source so that we have synced up header and the dynamic rows down below. Okay, so 2 repeating groups there. Inside of that repeating group, I have my icon. By default, it's a unfilled in circle. And then in the condition, we're going to be looking at the rankings that are being created as the user selects and deselects. If those rankings exist for this candidate and this column, then we'll change the icon to be a green filled in circle with a check in the middle. So here I'm looking at the group votes vote record, right? The element, my group votes vote record, and then going to the related rankings, filtering it by the candidate, okay? And I'll go to first item. There should only be 1 ranking for that candidate. And then I can go to the rank value, that's the number. So if that number matches the current cell's number, remember we're in the repeating group here, then we know that the user positioned this candidate in this particular order. And so we'll fill in the circle. Okay, so if they say, if we're looking at cell for candidate A in column 1, if the candidate A ranking value is 1, then this will be selected. If we're looking at column 2, then it will fail that condition and it will remain with this unchecked circle here. Okay, so there's a logic for letting the user know what they've already chosen. You can see here in the column A, we're just displaying the candidate's name. So if you want to display any other information like their photo, a description, you can build out those details within the table here. Okay, now let's look at the workflows for the actual icon itself. Okay, so we have 3 different workflows here, and I've numbered them and I've put them in this voting folder here. The first scenario is that they've checked it to create a new ranking. Second scenario is that they're changing their decision. Maybe they go from ranking 1 to ranking 2 for the same candidate. The third scenario here is if they've deselected, and so that has to remove the ranking altogether. Remember, a ranking is a record of its own, so we're going to be manipulating the database anytime they make a selection or deselect those icons. So for creating a new ranking, the condition here that dictates this scenario here is that that they haven't ranked this candidate yet. Okay, so if the votes list of rankings list of candidates doesn't yet contain the candidate that we're looking at in the row, then we know that we're ready to create a new ranking. Now you'll see here in my expression it says group candidates candidate. Okay, so I have designed this so that I have a group holding the name. This group is very helpful because the group can pull in the rows candidate, and I can access this reference to this candidate from within the repeating group. You sort of lose relationships once you have nested repeating groups and tables and things like that. So by intentionally creating a source that you can get to by naming the element, you give yourself a really helpful shortcut. Okay, so group candidate is how I can reference the rows candidate from within the repeating group cell, which is really just, any workflows from this icon here. Okay, so again, if that parent element, that parent group's vote record, so the user's vote record that they've created, if their list of rankings associated candidates doesn't yet contain the group candidate, then we know that we're ready to create a new record. So we're going to create a new ranking. We'll save all of the details here. We know that the candidate is the group candidates candidate. This is just the name of the group here, candidate. The parent vote is our outer group's vote record. The rank is the current cell's number. Remember, we're inside of the repeating group. And the ballot is from our drop-downs value. Okay. Then we're going to update the vote record, which is the parent of the ranking, and add this new ranking to the votes list of rankings. So for changing a little bit more to it, we're looking at the list of rankings. We can see that the list of rankings, list of candidates already exists. So we know that we've made a selection for this candidate before. But if we can see that the cell's number is not the same as the ranking we gave that candidate, currently, right? So if they currently have a ranking of 1 and we're now clicking on the same candidate but ranking 2, if it's not the same, then that means we need to make an update. Okay, so this is looking at our list of rankings for this candidate. There should only be 1. If that current rank value is not the same as the cell, then we know it's time to update the ranking for that candidate, where again, we're just identifying that existing record that was created in scenario 1, changing the rank number, and we're removing the ranking from any other candidate that may have already been selected for the cell that we're in now. So let's say I put candidate A in position 1, candidate B in position 2. Okay, so both of those match that scenario 1 in the workflows. Now let's say I want to change my mind. I actually want candidate A to be in position 2. So this is going to change the rank value in the existing record for this candidate ranking from 1 to 2, and it's going to clear out the value for candidate B because I can't have 2 number 2s. Okay, so when I click on this icon here, it makes those 2 changes to the 2 separate ranking records for candidates A and B, right? That is this scenario here that we just went through, change ranking. All right, now for the last one, this is if we can see that the ranking exists for this candidate and the cell's number is the same as the rank we just that we've already saved to the database. That means we're deselecting. Okay, so that's this scenario here. I have currently selected position 2 for candidate A. If I select it again, that means I want to unselect it. Okay, so we're going to make a change to that specific record based on the candidate and just clear out the rank. All right, so that is the voting experience. It's just about manipulating those ranking records, making sure your conditions are clear so you don't have conflicting scenarios here, but very clear separate scenarios. Make sure that you name them so that you don't lose yourself here, and you update the appropriate fields. The front end design is really just about the conditions to make it checked, change the color. That's completely up to how you want it to look for your users. All right, so now we're going to go through the calculation side of things. I am using a few more plugins and custom states for all of this logic here. So I'm going to walk you through that, and then we'll take a look at the workflows. So I have a group here called Group Plugins to help me manage all of my plugin elements. I'm still using a list of numbers element to create the same type of table design over here to show our results. Note that the length of the list here is not the number of candidates like it was above. Here it's actually a custom state that I've called current round. so that it can dynamically generate the number of columns based on the number of rounds the ballot needs to find the winner. The workflow moves pretty quickly, so it's technically going to increment as it goes through the looping logic, but eventually we end up on the final number of rounds that we want for the ballot, and so that's what this number is here. This custom state is on a group called group calculate. That's this one right here, this kind of parent element. And I have my current round custom state as a number. I'm defaulting it to the number 1, so I always want to start with round 1. You'll see that I also have another custom state here called active candidates, which is a list of candidates, and this is going to be used in the looping workflows to help me keep track of which candidates are still alive, right? Which ones have not been eliminated. And then for the other plugins, this one here is my Simple Looper plugin, so I'm going to show you what that one looks like. That is this one right here, Simple Looper Workflow Repeater. This is a free plugin. This is going to help us with our looping logic. So we have this element on the page in order for it to work. We also have events and actions that we'll be triggering here. Now I'll pause here for just a second and let you know that yes, you can create the looping logic in the backend workflows as well. If you're familiar and comfortable with recursive systems, you can absolutely implement the same type of system that we have here with this plugin, especially if you have a more intensive implementation that has to go through a lot of different rounds. I'm working with ballots that have 3 or 4 candidates, so it doesn't take very long. But if you have something that's going to be much, much more complex, if you have many more things to do with the database as a part of those rounds, you may want to consider a recursive system. But this definitely gets the job done nicely here on the page. Our second plugin that we're using, I've actually got 2 instances of well, I guess technically it's the third plugin. It's our second new one. This one called Variable State. So I have 2 instances of these elements here called Variable State. All these are, they're kind of like custom states. They let me hold values. In my case, I'm using them to hold lists. The first one here is to hold all of the calculation rounds for this ballot. So I'm just searching for that ballot. And then this one here, the other one is to find all of the vote records that have been completed for this ballot. This is so that I don't have to do multiple searches in my workflow and use more workload units than I really need. Can you use custom states for this? Yes. Can you use repeating groups for this that are hidden? Yes, you absolutely can. If you have other sources on your page where you can access these lists without having to do unnecessary searches, that's perfectly fine. I tend to use this type of element, this plugin, whenever I want to more easily reference, if I have a lot of different variables that I want to work with. So I'm just really using this to also expose you to other tools that you can use, but it's certainly not the only way to reference a list, okay? So in our table design, our primary data source for the table is a list of candidates, just like the one above. And then in our inner repeating group, let's go over here, this is going to pull from the list of numbers B, so the one that we have down below, that is, again, going to generate the number of columns to match the number of rounds that we go through to calculate. And inside of this cell, we're showing a couple texts here to display the number of votes for this row's candidate for this column's row, right, that intersection, and then next to it the number, the percentage for that. So you don't have to design it exactly this way. This is, really just me displaying all of the data that we have so that we can confirm everything was calculated properly. So for example, to find the number of votes, I'm going to that variable state that has my list of calculation rounds and filtering it by the round number, that's the column, and the candidate, that's the row. Okay, there should only be one record that matches that intersection, and I'll go to the votes field. The percentage is the exact same expression, but it goes to the percentage field instead. I also have conditions on the group here to change the color. Again, this is more of just a design choice. So these 3 conditions are for our 3 possible outcomes: red for eliminated, green for winner, and then yellow for tie. So for the eliminated, we look at the calculation rounds for this particular round number, and I'm sorting it by the number of votes. So if the first record, which is the record that has the least number of votes, if that record's candidate is the row's candidate, then we know that they've been eliminated. And then here for the winner, we're going to go again to the list of calculation rounds specifically for this round and records where the percentage is greater than 50% or greater than 0.5, then we know, and we can see that that record's candidate is the row's candidate, then we know that that's the winner. This should always be the last round whenever one person has reached, the majority of votes. And then we have our tie here. So if the column number, right, the current cell's number is the same as the final number of rounds, okay, so I'm going to the ballots, list of calculation rounds, round number max. Okay, so basically this first part of the expression is if I'm currently in the final round and I can see that the drop-down's ballot value is tie, right, tie equals yes, and the ballot's eliminated list doesn't contain this row's candidate, then we will change the color to yellow. So basically that leaves everybody else who is still in it, and we're in the final round, and we can see that it's a tie. We know that they were a part of the tie, right? We change the color to yellow there. These text down below is just different ways of displaying all the same information. So for this eliminated, I have this text here that's just going to display, I have this formatted as text so that I could put a line break here as my delimiter, but it's the drop-down ballots list of eliminated candidates, and I'm displaying the candidate's name for each item in the list. Next to it, I have the winner, which is just a straight value from the ballot, very simple. And then for the tie, it's going to be all of the candidates in the ballot minus everyone that has been eliminated. So that leaves us with a tie. All right. So those are the display decisions that we made there for this demo design. All right, so now let's go into the workflow. So we'll start here with our calculate button. Again, you also don't have to have this from a single button click. Maybe it's an automatic thing. Maybe it happens in the backend workflow when a deadline has passed and it starts to calculate automatically. Maybe it calculates after every single vote is submitted. That part is up to you. I have this off of a button click so you can first see just in a very controlled way, once you have your vote data in the system, then you can, troubleshoot whatever you need if you're seeing outcomes that aren't what you expect here. Okay, I tend to do things in kind of broken down, more manual steps before automating things. So the button is clicked, and the first few things that we'll do here is reset the scenario. I've got this basically set up where I can recalculate. So in order to do that, I need to make sure that I don't have any data from previous calculations messing things up. So I'm going to first delete all of the calculation round records for this ballot, right? I'm starting fresh. Remember, a calculation round record is per candidate per round. So if I have 4 candidates starting with round 1, I'm going to have 4 records that are created. Then we're going to update the ballot to reset it. So we'll clear the eliminated list. We'll clear the calculations round list, which should technically also clear by itself when you delete the records. We clear out the winner and the tie field values here. I'm also going to reset my custom states. So I'm setting my current round back to number 1 if a previous calculation took us to 3 or 4 or something like that. I'm also resetting my active candidates. These are the people who have not yet been eliminated. So if I'm resetting, then this is basically the same as all of the candidates. We haven't eliminated anyone yet. And then I'm going to start my loop. So this action will be available once you install that Simple Looper plugin. You can just search for Simple Looper. You'll see that there are 3 actions here. We will be using all 3 of them. This is to kick things off, to start the loop. Okay. Now the loop, we have 2 different events. Okay, so whenever you start a loop, the event that you're triggering, I'm going to show you here. Let me delete this, like this here. Okay, so you create a new workflow. You'll see under your elements list here, over here, simple looper flow to be repeated. When you start the loop, it starts this workflow, and this workflow can run multiple times, however many times you want it to run. You'll have logic that will tell it to keep going with the looping or to stop. Once you have instructed the loop to stop, then it will trigger this event here. Okay, so that's what I have in purple, these 2 flows. This is the repeating flow that can go over and over and over again. And then this is the finished, like once the loop has been instructed to stop, you can still run other actions as a way to complete the loop, right? Things that you want to wait until it's finished before you run. So for the repetition, what it's looping on is a list of candidates, okay? And so for every candidate, we're going to count up the number of votes they got for the round that we're in. We're going to create the record to save all those details. We'll also update the ballot to add the new calculation round to the ballot. And then depending on whether we've gone through all of the candidates or not, we'll either continue running the loops or we'll finish the loop for the round. Okay, so if I just processed candidate A, I want to run the next iteration for candidate B to count the votes for B and create the calculation round for candidate B. Once we get through candidate C and D, right, 4 loops, then I can say, okay, we're done with all of our candidates, and then it will trigger this finish round event. Then we'll finalize the ballot. We'll determine who was eliminated, who is the winner, maybe if there was a tie. And depending on whether we have found a winner or not, right? Because there are some rounds where we haven't yet determined that, nobody's gotten the majority of the vote, then we may or may not start the loop all over again for the next round. The only thing that changes on the next round is our current round value and who the active candidates still are. Okay, so those slightly different variables, change where the votes go, and it can help us determine whether there's a winner or not. Okay, so again, the repeating workflow is per candidate, and we'll finish a round once we've gone through all candidates, and then using conditional actions here, we have a terminate action that may or may not run. We may start the loop all over again to begin the next round, right, with some slightly different variable values. Okay, so let's dig into the workflows here in more detail. So here's the repeating flow. Again, this is triggered as soon as you click on calculate. The last thing here is to start the loop. So the first thing is we're going to actually trigger a custom event to do the counting of the votes. I split that out into a separate custom event because there's a bit of logic there. I want that to be isolated. It's just easier to manage here in the workflow. That custom event is going to return that calculated value in this return data action. That way we can then use it in subsequent steps here in the main workflow. So I'll come back to the custom event in just a second. So once we have that calculated value, we're going to create the calculation round record. And this is where we're going to save all the values we know here. This is everything. So we know the ballot that this is for from the dropdown. The candidate is going to be from our custom state of active candidates. Okay, so that groups active candidates list, item number, whatever iteration we're on within the loop. So you have access to this simple looper's current iteration number just automatically when you're within the repeating flow here. Okay, so again, this is what we are looping on. So the candidate is whatever number candidate in our list of active candidates. Then the round number is our other custom state, current round. And that was set, at the beginning when we clicked on calculate. Remember here, current round is number 1. Okay. And then we have the number of votes is the result of our custom event trigger from step 1. So I go to result of step 1's number. So we will pass data back to be sent back to this flow here from the custom event. And then the percentage is simply that number divided by the number of total votes that we have. Okay, so we're going to go to one of our variable states, the list of votes overall that have been completed, whatever number that is. So if there's 100 votes that were sent in, this number for this candidate out of that total number is the percentage number of votes that they got for this round. Okay, then we're going to update the ballot to add that new calculation round record to the ballot's list of rounds. Then we will run the next iteration if we have not gone through all of the candidates, not gone through all of the active candidates yet. So if this simple looper's current iteration number is less than the number of active candidates, then we run it again, right? And so like if there's 4 candidates and we're on iteration number 1, then we're going to run it again. And then it will be iteration number 2. 2 is still less than 4. We run it again. Once we get to number 4, 4 is not less than 4. That is going to trigger the finish, right? So the condition here for finishing the loop is when the iteration number is the same as the number of active candidates, right? We've reached the last item in that list. And so once we finish, the loop stops and we'll trigger this event over here. So finishing this loop basically says that we finished a round, and it may be the last round. We may need to run more rounds. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to update the ballot and add whichever candidate got the fewest number of votes for the round we just processed. Okay, so eliminated, this is our list of candidates, and we're going to find the ballot's calculation rounds list, right? Those have been created already. They've been added to the ballot. We're going to filter it by this round. And notice that we're sorting by the number of votes so that the first item, when we're not descending, the sort order is not descending. The first item is essentially the candidate that received the fewest number of votes. Okay, so that's the candidate from that calculation round record that we're adding to this list. All right, so one more time, the list of calculation rounds filtered by the round number that we're currently on, sorting by the number of votes so that the first item is the one with the fewest number of votes, and going to that record's candidate. They are the eliminated candidate for this round. And we only want to do this under this condition here. First, there have to be at least 2 active candidates, right? Greater than 1. And the person who got the fewest number of votes, their percentage has to be less than 0.5, because in the scenario where we have a tie, then that's going to mean that the last two candidates are both at 0.5. It would have to be an even split for it to be a final tie in the end. Okay, if it's a tie, we don't want to eliminate either one of them. Okay, so this is if this is a clear elimination. The next action is to declare our winner. So this is only going to happen if we have a calculation round record for this round where the calculated percentage is greater than 50%, right? Now we've found that somebody has won the majority. There should only be one record with that calculated value, and if that's the case, then we're going to find that candidate. So we're going to take this ballot's list of candidates and remove everyone who has been eliminated, and we should have just one person remaining. That's our winner there. Okay. You can also find this if you grab this same expression here, this drop downs calculation around filtered with these two constraints. You'll go to the first items candidate. That would give you the exact same value. Okay. The third action is to determine a tie. This is only going to happen if we have two records where both of them are percentage equals 0.5, right? They're both 50%, and it's for this round that we're in. Okay, remember, don't forget your constraint for the round number, because this finish loop flow is for updating the ballot for this round that we've just processed. It may not be the final round. Now, we want to stop the workflow completely, just end the calculation, full stop, if we have determined that there's a tie or we have a winner. All right, so if the result of step 3 tie is yes, or the result of step 2's winner is not empty, then we know we have one of those two scenarios. And if that's the case, we're done. We're done calculating everything. If we have not found a winner and it's not a tie, then we have to go to the next round. So the terminate action will skip because the condition will fail. And then we'll update the custom state for the next round. So the next round is going to update the list of active candidates. So we have the existing list of active candidates minus everyone who's been eliminated so far. So minus list, the result of step 1's list of eliminated. And then we're also going to update the current round to increment by 1. So if we've just processed round 1, now the next round is going to be round 2, right? 1 plus 1 gives us round 2. And then we'll start the loop all over again. So we trigger that start action, and it brings us back to the repeating workflow. So we'll start again with the first active candidate. Not just the first candidate in the list of candidates on the ballot, right? Let's say candidate A was eliminated in the first round. Then round 2 is going to start with, let's say candidate B if they're still in it. Okay, it's the first candidate in the list of active candidates. Okay, remember this is the action here. Candidate for this round is active candidates, item number, whatever loop number we're on. So it's going to go through all of the active candidates and finish the loop when we've gone through that list, and then calculate all the details for that round. And we repeat until we finally have a winner or there is a tie. All right, so now I'm going to jump back to our final piece here that we haven't gone through yet, which is the calculation of the votes. So this is our custom event. I have a parameter to receive the current candidate that we're processing. So this is from the repeating workflow. This is per candidate. So per candidate, we're going to trigger the count. Okay, so we need to know which candidate we're working with. So I have a parameter here for that particular value. And I'm also going to send back data, right? I'm going to do the calculation in this return data action to send it back to the original triggering workflow, the repeat candidate flow. So the return data action, all this needs is a number. This is going to be my number of votes that the candidate received for this particular round. So I'm going to that variable state that I have that's finding my list of completed votes. Okay, and I'm going to go to each of those votes list of rankings. Okay, remember every user who is submitting a vote has multiple rankings, one for candidate A, one for candidate B, and so on. Each of the rankings, and I need to count up the number of rankings that are left after the filter here. So what am I filtering on? I'm filtering on, first of all, the candidate. Okay, so every vote is going to have a ranking for each candidate, but my repeating workflow is going one candidate at a time. So I only care to count the rankings for the candidate that I'm working with. This is my current candidate parameter from the custom event. Now we have this advanced filter here, and this is the one that you're probably going to need to study the closest, because this is what's addressing the preferences that voters have for every candidate. This takes care of all of it, no matter if their number one choice is still in the race or not in the race anymore. This captures everything we need for distributing votes properly across the different rounds. Okay, so here's what's happening. We're going to evaluate for every single ranking, right, in the list that we have over here. We're going to the votes list of rankings. We're going to evaluate whether that ranking's rank is the lowest number in the votes list of rankings. Okay, when we start, the lowest number for every vote is always going to be 1, right? There's always going to be a number 1 choice, a number 1 preference. But as the rounds progress, a voter's number 1 or maybe even number 2 may be eliminated. So we want to count the ranking for that vote as long as it is the lowest possible number for that vote. So for example, let me kind of talk through a scenario here. Let's say the ranking record that we're processing is a voter's candidate A rank number 1. Okay, candidate A rank number 1. So this ranking's rank is number 1. And if we look at this ranking's parent vote, right, that's the summary record, list of rankings. Okay, so they have now, in this list, they should have a number 1, a number 2, a number 3, a number 4. But we want to make sure from that list of records that the candidates are still active. They haven't yet been eliminated. Okay, so let's say at the very beginning, no one's been eliminated. So the rankings rank, which is number 1, is going to be the list of rankings lowest number, which is number 1 in this case. If nobody's been eliminated, number 1 is the lowest number. All right. If I am now looking at the second ranking for candidate B, right? Same vote. It's the same voter, but we're looking at their candidate B selection. So candidate B is rank number 2 for this particular voter. Well, rank number 2 is not the same as the lowest number in the votes list, right? This one person's list of rankings. It's not. So that ranking will not be counted. That ranking will not be counted. And again, for ranking C, let's say this voter put them in position 4, right? They're their last choice. 4 is not the same as the lowest possible number for that vote, which is going to be 1. And so that vote's not going to be counted. Only one record should be counted for every vote. Now, let's say that candidate A got eliminated. Okay, they are no longer in the list of active candidates. So that ranking is going to be filtered out of this list here. This list in the second part of this expression. So now what is the minimum number going to be from that list? Well, now it's going to be 2. For this voter, the lowest possible number for their vote is their second choice because their first choice got voted out. So when we're evaluating rankings now, is the rank number the same as their next viable choice? If so, they'll get counted. If not, it gets skipped. It doesn't get counted. So this one expression addresses counting up the appropriate record for the candidate we're in based on who is still active. And if somebody gets eliminated, it will count the next preference for that particular vote. All right. So once we have the correct rankings in our list here, after those filters have been applied, we'll count them up. That's the number of votes that candidate received. And that number will be returned back to the repeating workflow here, and then will be saved to the calculation record right here. And then we'll also be able to calculate the percentage based off of that. What I encourage you to do when you're building this out in your application is to come over here to the custom event and add a breakpoint in the debug mode. And watch this evaluate when you run the workflow in your preview page, and Bubble will automatically pull up the debugger when it reaches this step. That way you don't have to go through your step-by-step mode and clicking through all of these different actions here. It'll wait until it gets to this point, and then it will pull up the debugger so that you can move through it and actually see how this expression evaluates for you. Okay. You can also set up a repeating group and basically recreate this list with the filter so that you can understand how rankings get counted or not counted based on who has been eliminated or not. So you'll want to have sort of a separate, you can do a multi drop down with a list of candidates, and you can add or subtract candidates to see how things change in a repeating group that displays, this list of rankings here. That's a great way to sort of confirm visually to yourself what's actually happening with your expression. All right, there you have it. I know that there's many parts to this, but if your application is looking to implement ranked choice voting, this is the most streamlined piece of logic that we've been able to put together here to create the minimum number of records that you need. I mean, you are going to create a handful of records, so just be aware of that. If you need to clear things out once you're done with the voting process, be aware of at what point would make the most sense to do that. Especially when you're testing. But this is, the most streamlined process that we've put together here for this type of system. It works really well and it allows you a lot of flexibility in terms of design to present the results back to your users. All right, I hope you enjoyed that lesson. That's one that we have in our VIP membership. If you are someone who has a good baseline understanding of the Bubble platform, this can be a great resource to have in your back pocket to help you fill in those, gaps in knowledge. We have lots of walkthroughs that take you through very niche scenarios, very niche features, and we also have an area for members to submit their own content requests. We're very much creating content that you guys want. So send in a request if there's something that you're looking to do that you don't find in the database. We want to build out the stuff that's going to be the most helpful for you guys. So if you want to learn more, you can find all the details in the description below. For now, hope you enjoyed the lesson, hope you learned something, and if you did, definitely take a look at the content you're about to see on the next screen. It's going to help you take things even further.